If you're learning Norwegian, then most likely you're not speaking enough. When I look at students' learning routines, then I see people repeat their vocabulary, study grammar, read a lot, listen a lot. Sometimes they even work on their pronunciation, rare enough, but it still happens. But usually they just don't speak enough. And sometimes the reason for that is that they're just afraid of speaking, which is another issue. I've made a separate video about that. Maybe you're not aware of the fear of speaking. It can come as a fear in disguise when you say something like, for example, oh, I have to study more grammar before I start speaking Norwegian. That's most likely fear in disguise. But sometimes people are even not that scared of speaking Norwegian, but then they tell me something like, yeah, well, I don't have the occasion to speak. Maybe they don't live in Norway. They cannot afford to hire a Norwegian teacher. Or even if they have Norwegian speaking friends, they're like, yeah, I'm a beginner, but it's hard for Norwegian native speakers to accustom their vocabulary and everything, so it's a bit difficult. How should I practice speaking? And one of the most underrated ways of practicing speaking is actually talking to your teddy bear, or to your dog, or to Niels. You can talk to Niels if you have one at home like I have. Anyway, we have to practice speaking just like we have to practice playing the violin if we want to get better. And just like with the violin, we don't need necessarily somebody who will listen to us while we're practicing. So you will get experience even when talking to yourself or to your teddy bear or to your wall. And your teddy bear has a number of advantages. One of them is they're cheaper than a tutor. They're always available. They're not judgmental. They're not going to laugh when you make a mistake. They're not going to frown when you're making a mistake. And they don't give bad advice. Sometimes people, especially native speakers, might give you bad advice. It's better to have no advice than to have bad advice. So your teddy bear is actually completely underrated. And of course, they don't talk back to you. And then you say, yeah, okay, Werner, but isn't a conversation something between two people where two people interact, like a tennis match or something like that? Well, yes and no. Firstly, I would say listen to your neighbors who have been married 25 years, and when they have a conversation on the balcony in the backyard, you might notice that sometimes it looks like a conversation at first glance, but really it's just two monologues going on simultaneously. So the other thing is that many conversations, or at least many things that you're going to say during a conversation, are highly predictable. For example, at a party or whenever you meet somebody, people might ask you about your job and you would like to tell them something about your job. So this is something you can practice on your own. You don't need somebody to reply to you in order to prepare what you're going to say, especially if you have a somehow specific job. Like, for example, I don't know, say you're an ethnobotanist. Nobody has a clue what that is, right? Your boss might know, but your parents most likely have no clue what that is. So you can tell them that I am a ethnobotanist. Firstly, no Norwegian course is going to teach you what that is. Even my course will not have this kind of vocabulary. But then not just that, people will ask you, okay, what does that mean? What exactly do you do? And then you can look up the words that are necessary to describe what exactly your job is like. And even if you have a job that is much more common than an ethnobotanist, people might not know exactly what you're doing, or maybe they even know what you're doing, but then they want to know where exactly you work and what is your work time and so on. So all these things you can practice without needing somebody else to help you or to practice interacting. Other examples like, why are you learning Norwegian? That's your personal answer. You can prepare it in advance. What are your hobbies? What did you do in the last holidays? Where do you like to travel? Many things. You can come up with them in my Norwegian course. There's more examples for that, but I think you can even be creative with this yourself. You can practice many things by yourself, and you don't need anybody to listen to you. And actually, when you do that a lot, like for example, when you practice a couple of days again and again how to describe your job, well, eventually you'll get a little bit more fluent with it. You'll get a little bit more confident with it. And then when it happens in real life that somebody asks you, you're like, oh, okay, I know what to say in this situation, and it's much easier. So just like with the violin, the concert is when you're out in real life and you meet real people, whereas the practice at home is just as valuable. Now you might say, okay, yeah, but that shouldn't be all my speaking practice. I agree, you should practice speaking somewhere else also. You should try to make an effort to find native speakers or other students. Now let's go through a few options options on how you can talk to real people. If you're not ready to talk to native speakers, and if you're not ready to hire a tutor, you might consider a language cafe. We're organizing a language cafe also. It's free, and you'll meet other students online, or there are, of course, other language cafes where you go in person, but it can happen online. And ideally, you meet people who are at your level, or roughly at your level, which helps to keep the conversation going, because it's not like there is somebody who is super fluent, who is frustrated that nothing she says is understood by the other people, or the other way around, that you're maybe a beginner and you just are still struggling with speaking Norwegian, and then the other ones are frustrated. So ideally, you find somebody who is a little bit at your level. That's less scary, and you also get the experience to keep a conversation going. Of course, the disadvantage is that you're also going to pick up the mistakes that these people make, so it shouldn't also be your only language contact. Interacting with a native speaker is also an option that you should consider definitely, and eventually, I mean, that's why you are learning any language. So you might find yourself a tandem partner. I'm going to link an app in the website where you can find somebody. A tandem partner means you find somebody who wants to learn your native language or another language that you speak very well, and in return they teach their native language, or teach. It's just like basically you can meet online or in person, and 20 minutes you speak Spanish and 20 minutes Norwegian, for example, or half an hour. And it's just like giving and taking instead of hiring a professional tutor. That's a cheap way where you help somebody out with a language that you are fluent in, and they help you with learning Norwegian. Can be really cool. I did that a lot. I learned a lot from it. And last option that I'd like to mention these days is an AI. Of course, that's not a real native speaker, but this is coming. At the moment, I have to say, most of the AI bots that I see are not super good yet, but it's still cool to play around, and especially if you're scared of speaking to native speakers, then this can help you a lot with this fear. So we're back to actually talking to your teddy bear, and this is in a way a teddy bear that will even respond to you. So it might be worth trying. You can play around with it. Usually it's not very cheap, or they have a free version where you can try it a couple of days and see if this is something for you. So I'd like to know, please share in the comments, what is your way of speaking Norwegian? How do you practice it, and where do you find Norwegian speakers? And if you are interested in doing the other thing that most people neglect when learning Norwegian, which is the Norwegian pronunciation, I'm inviting you to watch the pronunciation videos on this channel.